Now let's talk about the fundamentals of coaching, or the actual science behind coaching. These fundamentals really help me improve my coaching. It helped me organize a more consistent training pattern and really helped me take my crew to another level. Now, the first laws that we want to talk about are the law of overload, the law of reversibility, and the law of specificity. The law of overload states that when a load is placed on the body becomes fatigued, which leads to an overcompensation with proper loading and recovery. Now, the goal of our training is to provide the body with progressive overload, which is going to lead to optimal overcompensation or increase in performance. Here you see on this basic chart, if the body is going along in its basic state, and then we apply a stimulus or a stress to the body, it is going to fatigue. And once it is allowed to rest, it is going to compensate. And this overcompensation is what we're looking for. That's going to be an increase in performance. Now, as time goes on and we progressively train, if we do it in a correct way, you'll see the fitness level will continue to increase. Next, we have the law of reversibility. And this states that if loading is spaced too far apart, the body will return to its pre-training state. So if we go back, we can see on this chart that if after one session we don't do anything else, it's going to taper back down to where we started again. So training sessions need to be completed on a systematic and consistent basis. You can see here, if training is spaced too far apart, you're never going to see that rise in performance. Everything is going to be the same or no performance gains. And the opposite is true. If training is spaced too close together, we're going to see a decrease in performance. You can see if there's no time to recover, you're never going to have that overcompensation effect in the rise in performance level. Now we have the law of specificity, which refers to the fact that each athlete and event is unique. Therefore, the loads must be specific to the individual athlete and his chosen event. Make sure you consider each athlete when planning your workouts. Now, common sense tells us that we're not going to train our throwers the same as distance runners. You have to differentiate between the events. A couple additional principles you want to keep in mind are the principle of variety and the principle of active involvement. The principle of variety, you want to keep things, keep a variety of activities in your workouts and training patterns. Here you can see in the picture, these guys are changing it up a little bit on the podium. This is kind of funny. The conference commissioner, he was very proud of the fact of always having very proper podium pictures, and I think he was shocked to see this happening. So some of the keys to the principle of variety, it helps to prevent overtraining and overuse injuries, and also to maintain interest and motivation. For active involvement, the athletes must want to actively and willingly participate. They have to believe in and commit to the training program. If the athlete does not buy into the program, they're not going to see the gains. Same thing is what your mind will think you will achieve. All of those things. The athlete has to buy into the program in order to succeed. Now let's talk about some of the teaching concepts. We have 4 major concepts to keep in mind. First, you have to teach big movements before you teach small movements. The athletes are going to find it easier to master the big movements before going on to the smaller, more intricate movements. Second, going along with the first one, is go from simple to complex tasks. Obviously, it's easier to learn the simple tasks, which will build into the more complex tasks. Third, provide variety, change of pace, You never want to keep doing the same thing over and over again. And fourth, practice under competition conditions. Allow the athletes to practice their new skills under competition conditions and see what happens when they're using those skills at 100%. Now we have the 3 stages of learning. All learners go through these 3 stages. First, we have the thinking stage. This is where the learner visualizes the action. The learner must know the final objective of the skill and why they're performing the skill. In the learning stage, the learner is testing strategies to complete the skill. They're trying to figure out how to do it. You want to try to tie the skill into previous experiences and skills that the athlete is already proficient in. So you want to ladder skills on top of each other. Third, we have the skilled stage. Now the skill can be performed consistently. And once this is achieved, the athlete can start focusing on the timing and the rhythm. Before this point, it's just a matter of getting the drill down. You can't really teach rhythm and timing until this is mastered. So every athlete's going to progress through these 3 stages differently, and you have to be patient. You'll find some will go through it very fast, and others take a long time. And you have to provide that flexibility in your training program to allow for that progression. Once athletes have reached the skilled stage, really try to incorporate the skill into competition situations. You provide practice competitions not just of standard meet procedures, but change things up. Have a home run derby type competition where they have to make it over a certain line to allow them to practice different skills. Make the sector smaller. All kinds of different things you can use, not just standard competitions. Be creative. Now let's talk about some of the steps in teaching a skill. First of all, you want to introduce the skill. Don't demonstrate it yet. Just explain the what and the why. Let the athletes focus on your voice. Second, now it's time to demonstrate the skill. Actually show what to do. Without speaking, 3 to 4 times, allow the athlete to see the skill. Third, allow the athletes to practice the skill. And now is not the time to give them feedback. Let them try it for 4 to 6 minutes on their own. Do some kinesthetic problem solving of their own. Try to figure it out. It's really interesting here because you'll see athletes kind of get together. They'll start talking to each other and pointing things out to each other, and that really provides a strong team building moment where they can help each other out. And also, you have to realize that in a standard crew, you're not going to be there for everybody all the time during all practices and at all meets. So you want to allow some inner coaching amongst the athletes and help each other out and build dialogue that way. After that point, then you want to provide athletes some feedback. Let them know what they're doing correctly and how to correct mistakes or do the movement more efficiently. Here are some cues for coaching. First of all, you want to teach simply. Allow the athletes to focus on what they're supposed to do instead of trying to interpret what you're trying to say. So try to say things in simple terms for them. Second, practice within the athlete's limits. Now, we always want to push our athletes to that next level, but remember, it has to be on a systematic, consistent basis. We can't expect them to all of a sudden be at the top of a mountain without making those gradual steps in between. So just remember, each athlete has their own limits, and you have to keep those in mind. 3, be sure to encourage a wide range of movements. You want to avoid overuse injuries, and once again, provide a variety of things to do. 4th, don't expect too much too soon. A lot of times as coaches, we think just because we say something, the athlete should be able to do it right away. And you have to understand that that's just not the case. like we said before, all athletes will learn differently. Some will get it right away, and others, you can tell them 1,000 times, and maybe on that 1,005th time, it finally clicks and they get it. So be patient. Fifth, don't give them too much to think about. Uh, Sometimes as coaches, we see a lot of things that can be fixed or tinkered with in the throws, and make sure you focus on one or two things for a practice, and don't give them too many more besides that. Anything else should relate to those one or 2 points. But if an athlete is focusing on 5 or 6 different cues to try to fix on every throw, they're not going to be very effective. 6, be sure to point out important points to focus on. And that goes along with that 5th point. Instead of thinking about things all the way throughout the throw, try to shoot for certain positions to be in or certain visual cues. Give them just a couple of points to work on throughout the throw. 7, try to help the athlete self-evaluate. So instead of always telling the athlete what you saw or what they need to fix, open up a dialogue with them. Ask them, how did the throw feel? What did they do correctly? What do they think they needed to do better? Things like that. Get them talking to you, a back and forth dialogue, which will help them learn more. Once they start thinking about it, they'll understand the movement better, and will help them self-evaluate, so that when they're on their own, whether it be at a meet where you can't quite see them, or when they graduate from your program onto the next level, or if they're just competing at a summer meet for fun, they can help themselves. And 8th, be positive. A positive environment is going to be good for your athletes. It's going to help them grow, they're going to have fun, and it's going to be a lot more fun for you as well. Next, let's talk about biomechanics. Whether you want to admit it or not, as a throws coach, you're going to be a biomechanist. Now, biomechanics are based on Newton's 3 laws of motion. His first law states that all bodies continue in a state of rest or uniform motion in a straight line unless acted upon by an outside force. Now, this applies to us, basically saying that if a shot put is on the ground, it's not going to go to that 60-foot line unless we put it out there. We have to propel it or add that outside force. The second law, acceleration of a body is proportional to the force causing it and takes place in the direction it acts. And this means that force equals mass times acceleration, or F equals ma. So we are always looking to create more of a force or a farther distance. In order to do this, we either have to change the mass of the thrower implement system or the acceleration. Now, obviously, we don't want to play with the mass too much, so usually we're trying to create more acceleration, either through more efficient technique or through more strength. The third law, to every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. In this, whenever we are throwing anything, remember we have to be putting force in the opposite way. Now, this is really important and fundamental for the throws. Both feet must be in contact with the ground to accelerate the implement. Now think about how many athletes have you seen, they're trying to throw and they're up in the air, or they jump before they throw. And that just doesn't make sense, and it's all too common in American throws. You have to put force into the ground in order to accelerate any implement. Remember, the force has to transfer from the ground up through the body and into the implement. So think about, if you're in the air, you have nothing to push against, you're not creating an efficient throw. One of Robosaurus's favorite quotes is, you can't shoot a cannon out of a canoe, and that's really true. Just that quote is always funny to me. But it's so true. You see so many throwers trying to throw with just the upper body, and not using that solid base to throw from. Now we have two types of motion in the throws. We have linear motion, which is movement in straight lines, and then we have rotary motion, which is motion turning or rotating about an axis. And all the throws combine both linear and rotary motion. Now when we do drills, we are trying to isolate usually one specific type of motion. We have to remember that the end goal of all drills is to develop more efficient technique, which leads to longer throws. Always keep that in mind. Sometimes we get too caught up in the drills and we'll spend so much time on a drill that we'll get really good at that drill, but as a result of that, it will just destroy the rhythm of the entire throw because we can't incorporate that back into the full throw. So remember, the drill is pulling the throw apart, but we always have to put the throw back together, and keep that in mind when you're going through those drills. Some biomechanical principles of the throws. In order to have good throws, you have to have force must be applied in the proper direction. That's common sense. If you want the implement to land in the millisector, you have to apply the proper force in the proper direction to get it there. Second, the athlete must apply force over the greatest range of motion. In order to achieve the longest throws possible, you want that nice long range of motion. Third, the athlete must maintain proper body position. When I see this, I always think of posture. Posture is so important in the throws. You always want to focus on athlete's posture and what the athlete needs to do to correct any posture imbalances there. Must be slow to fast rhythm. And then fifth, there must be a summation of forces. You want to use all forces possible, so you work from the ground up and try to incorporate all muscles from your legs up all the way through the core into the upper body, all the way into the implement. So in conclusion, this is meant to be a brief introduction into the actual science of coaching. Just give you the basis. While the techniques and events will continue to change and evolve, these laws and principles are going to remain the same regardless of the sport or event you are coaching. So keep these in mind no matter what athletic activity you look to do in the future. This whole module is really geared toward laying the foundation for the whole rest of the program and for you to develop as an outstanding coach. So I hope you found this information useful, and I hope you found it to be new information or good review of information you may already know.